Hello everyone, welcome to GS Core. E-government or the e-paradigm has become the buzzword to go when we are talking about the governments which are functioning in present times. And it is also increasingly becoming the preferred choice of government to deliver services to its citizens. While we are talking about the e-paradigm, while e-governance is one arm of that paradigm in which the citizens receive services from the government, the another very important dimension is the e-government. Hello everyone, my name is Abhishiekh Saxena, and in today's special report, we'll be discussing e-government development index. So, while e-governance has been largely the predominant actor when we are talking about the e-interventions in which government is one of the stakeholders, e-government has been so far playing the second lead. However, e-government is something which is a prerequisite for e-governance, because still the government itself does not adopt the e-practices or the electronic practices or use of ICT in its internal workings, then it will be like an empty vessel which will not be able to deliver these services in the e-form to the citizens. Hence, e-government is a very important dimension to consider. So, e-government development index basically strives to look into this e-government dimension, right? So let us get into the details of what this e-government development index is all about. So first of all, let us look at the aim of this index. Basically, this index tries and map out the performance on e-government of the UN states or the countries which are the part of United Nations. Okay, it assesses several things. For example, website development in the country. Okay, its patterns. It also looks into the access characteristics of these websites and these interfaces through which a citizen or largely the stakeholder, I should say, not the citizen here directly, accesses these systems such as infrastructure, education levels to be able to operate these systems. Okay, basically how the country is using its various arms to promote the access and inclusion of the people. Okay, so that is the larger idea to measure the aims. Next, while we are talking about the index, it is not an absolute index, it is a relative index. When I say it is not an absolute index, it is a relative index, I mean that the idea is not here that okay, this country is superior or this country has, for example, X number of systems or Y number of systems, right? It is about relative. So there might be a very small country, for example, Luxembourg or Switzerland, with a very low population numbers, and in absolute numbers it might even have lesser computer systems vis-a-vis, let us say, Bangladesh or India, but their overall performance with regards to e-government might be superior than these countries. So it is not an absolute index, it is a relative index to capture the e-government development. Okay, rather it is the performance which is the major focus. Okay, then UNDESA, okay, it stands for United Nations development, development, I beg your pardon, it stands for United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. So this department basically play a key role, in publishing this particular index, and it has been doing so since the year 2001. Since the year 2001. Okay. So for whom are we making these surveys? Because these indexes, these surveys, they might not be very legible to a common citizen, right? But it again dwells into a very important aspect of e-government, right? So who can be the principal user, or who can be the principal beneficiary of the findings of these surveys to progress ahead or to benefit out? It will largely be policy makers. That means the stakeholders within the government, okay, academia, your civil society. So the ultimate user, or the user which can somehow tangibly use the findings of this survey, is not a single person or a unit. Rather, it is a collective entity like policymakers, academia, civil society, okay, other practitioners and experts in the field of, let us say, development, sustainability, public administration. All right. So that is the larger group we are talking about when we say the salient, the intention or the end users of the particular survey. Okay. Then it looks at various dimensions of e-government. When I say various dimensions, those dimensions be that how much of online services are there. So the quantum, both in qualitative and quantitative sense, the expanse, the excess, okay. Provision of online services, telecommunication, connectivity, and another very important aspect. See, you can, fairly easily expand this capacity once you have the requisite manpower, once you have the requisite, infrastructure. But how to use them effectively? So that is something which is critically dependent on human capacity. So it's not just about the existence of systems or infrastructure. It's about their end usage and whether the benefit is getting accrued or not. So therefore index is not an absolute index. It is relative. It is subjective in nature. Okay. So these are largely, I can say, the dimensions on which it looks upon. Now let us talk about methodology a bit, that what kind of methodology it is being adopted. So mathematically speaking, it is adopting a weighted average of normalized scores on these three dimensions of e-government. Okay, I will tell you about these dimensions, but I hope you know what is a weighted average and normalized scores. Okay, so a weighted average would be that on, let us say, three parameters A, B, C, right, it is being attached a weight of 10, it is being attached a weight of 20, it is being attached a weight of 30. The score is, let us say, the score here is 50 out of 100, here it is 30 out of 100, here it is 20 out of 100, and then you will multiply this 500, 600, 600 again, right? So this will be a score. Let us say this was for 1000 people, and if we are going to look for 10,000 people, we will normalize this score for 1000 people if we are keeping 1000 as the standard. So a weighted average and normalized scores are taken so that equally we can measure. But often what happens is that this mathematical or statistical method might not be very exact, in terms that on paper, yes, it will be exact, but it might not reflect the ground reality because of the extrapolation and the deflation we are doing with our numbers here, right? So that is why it is being said that this is not a absolute index. Okay. So the scope and the quality of the online services, it is being measured by online services index. I told you the three pillars. Okay, so the development of telecommunication infrastructure, that is the telecommunication infrastructure index. Okay, then HCI is human capital index. So it is the weighted average of all the three dimensions which ultimately make up for the e-government development index. So obviously these are being measured using the methodology on different grounds. That is something of a granular detail which might not be required for our study. But the idea here is it is crucially mentioning three important pillars: the human capacity or the human development, the infrastructure, and the availability of the services which can be consumed. Okay, so that is the larger idea here. Moving forward, let us look at India's position. Before I get into this, we first need to look at the stakeholder or the majority, very important stakeholder here when we talk about e-government. So in India, the nodal ministry is Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Okay? Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. And when we are talking about India's rank, since it is churned out by United Nations and it practically looks at every United Nation country, so the participating countries are 193 across the world. The participating countries are 193 from across the world. Okay, so that is something which is there. In 2020, see, this index comes out once in 2 years. So you have here the numbers from 2014 to 2020, and the latest one will be out in the year 2022. So do keep a tab on it, right? So in 2020, India's rank was 100th with the composite score of 0.5964. Okay, and in 2018, its rank was 96th. So India in a way has slipped 4 ranks. So 96 is better than 100. So India has slipped 4 ranks here vis-a-vis the 2018 numbers, while India jumped by 11 ranks from 2016 to 2018. So as the introduction said that it is relative in nature. So it not necessarily means that we have performed shabbily or rather very poorly, that we have deteriorated in rank. Rather, some people or some countries rather, have performed far better than they were performing earlier, right? So that is the larger takeaway which, we should be focusing on. Okay. Here I would like to talk about the participation index. The participation index, when we say participation index. Participation index is a very important dimension to look for the overall government development. Okay, because it is in a way a supplementary to the United Nations government index. Okay. Right. So this particular index is derived through 3-4 important criteria. That is information sharing, another one consultation, and decision making, and decision making. Okay. And also it takes into account the local online service index into consideration. So basically, in a way, with each level delving deeper into the aspects related to government. Okay. Basically, this local online service index looks into the local governments, or basically the city governments or the village level governments, and their engagement vis-a-vis the government. So the insights which emerge out of the government development index I'm sorry, are not something which is superficial or give you macro ideas. Looking into the details of the data which gets turned out in the coming up of this index, we can clearly find out the loopholes from the bottom up, or we can derive or deduce policy prescription, even related to academia, research papers, civil society organizations, to make interventions, right? So that is the larger approach. Then especially indices like these hold importance during COVID-19. Why? As you all are aware, that COVID-19 presented the world with a scenario which was unprecedented in more than one ways. Though we have had Spanish flu and pandemics before, but the interconnected world and the strong citizen engagement, exchanges of people, data, information, commerce is at a mammoth scale, which was prevailing at the pandemic's time. So it presented a sort of a different challenge, and hence in a way giving impetus to more efforts on the lines of e-government. Okay, so this, in a way, COVID-19 pandemic provided a further impetus to the project of e-government in general, and hence enhancing the utility of this index. Okay. At the same time, let us look at India's ranking vis-a-vis other countries. Okay. So just to show you, while we talk about India being an IT superpower, IT hubs like Bangalore, Pune, Chennai, Gurgaon, they are flourishing still. We lack 100. We rank 100. And look at our peers: Dominica, Ghana, Grenada, Bhutan, Namibia, Maldives, even countries, like Bolivia, San Martino, St. Kitts and Nevis Islands are ahead of us. And I'm not talking about, the countries who dominate the charts when it comes to certain European countries and so on and so forth. So that is something to be noteworthy, right? And that pushes us to think that, there are systemic lacunas which exist in the smooth adoption and the fruitful adoption rather of the e-government systems. And it ultimately boils down to the three pillars, that is infra, human resource and access. So while infra can easily be sorted out, but to provide access and the human capital, trained manpower, working in villages, cities and towns, it is again a very, very mammoth task. Training the government servants which have a legacy knowledge base and are hard to train, right? So these are some of the lacunas which points us towards this thing. No matter, we are building certain platforms. For example, you have e-Lekha, e-office, systems like Pragati, etc., which are working. But these are interventions which are at the very macro level, not ingrained in the day-to-day functioning. We are pretty slow in adopting these e-government tools and techniques, considering the size and the mammoth IT expertise which we have. Because countries which do not possess all these benefits are still ahead of us. Look at the countries. None of the big countries which claim to be the regional powers or superpowers are here, right? So this is again a very big question mark on not just our stature as a country, but also in terms of our development priorities and how we move towards sustainable practices, more efficient, economic, effective, transparent and accountable government functioning. Okay. So let me tell you, Denmark was ranked first with the score of 0.9758. So we are almost 30 to 40% behind Denmark. The survey or the index was developed over data collected July 2018 to June 2020. So this fairly represents a realistic picture, considering the pandemic really came in big time during the heydays of this survey cycle. Okay. So that is there. So while India's index on online services was satisfactory, to the tone of 0.9514, we faltered on other grounds. For example, 0.6627 on human capital, which is in a way below the average or below the global average. Okay, so these things point out the areas of intervention. While we are reasonably doing good when it comes to the services being there online, but we fall majorly on the human capital aspect and infrastructure. Okay. So this picture will show you the graph of how India has performed over the years. So this 1996. So while since 2012 we were on the ascendance, this 1996 and the 2020 has brought us 4 ranks down. And the real picture will be out in the year 2022 when we can compare the latest data as and when this index comes out. So the idea here is not to give you the exact figures and make you memorize, rather to give you the overall picture about the importance and the pillar on which the e-government rests. Okay. Now, in the concluding aspects, let us look at certain challenges which we face. When I say challenges, we are clearly looking at some of the very prominent heads here. The first being access, second being human capital. When I say human capital, I am talking about functional literacy. Functional literacy. When we are talking about access, there are issues. For example, even if you have those portals, functioning, India is a kaleidoscope of languages. So do you have these portals in vernacular languages? Do we? We don't. Not all the services have multiple language interfaces. Do you have interoperability? Big questions, right? So when we are talking about challenges, there are plethora of challenges. For example, access, or the translation or the usability of these interfaces. Then another very important aspect of this is the digital divide which exists in the country. Okay. At the same time, low pace of technological progress. So while we are talking about India being a tech powerhouse, still we are here to adopt 5G. The affordability of ICT is again a big issue. Okay. So that is something which is there. Though the government is trying to do its bit, whether it is promoting semiconductors industry so that cheaper devices can be made, things like Common Service Center, BharatNet, so on and so forth, still we have a long road to travel. Now let us look at some of the important aspects of e-government, that where it is absolutely vital and where does it contribute. Okay. For example, I told you development and sustainability. I write them sustainability and development so that it is implicit that we are talking about sustainable development and development in general. Okay. Because e-government is again a very key aspect of the overall sustainable development goals paradigm. So that is why it is essential. Then accessibility. It has an element of inclusion. So if services are there and accessible, the citizens feel connected with the government The citizens act as active stakeholders in the functioning of the government. So this accessibility aspect of public services, provision of public goods via e-route is a very key aspect of e-government. Okay. Then for citizen-centric, citizen-oriented governance, we need an effective e-government, especially in the developing world, wherein citizens are heavily dependent on the government for a lot of aspects of their life. For example, education, health, etc. Okay. So that is something which is of utmost importance. So while we have talked about challenges, while we have talked about the importance, the solutions are pretty easy to guess. Boosting infrastructure, right? Accessibility, awareness, enhancing it in a mission mode, bringing more people into the fold, right? Digitization of government functioning, and all that is happening. It's just we need to press the pedal on the gas and take it to the next level, right? So that is the broader idea which I wanted to give you about the e-government and the e-government development index and the various facets to which it looks, right? Obviously specifics will come with the latest report in the year 2022, right? So that's all for this particular session. Thank you.